Hi guys, welcome back to Options Advantage. All right, guys, welcome back. Happy Friday. So we're going to start off today by going through some market movers, and then we'll get into how you can scalp options contracts and the best ways to go about scalping options contracts. So let's start with our market movers for the day. Money work. All right, let me share my screen with you guys. So first on watch, I'm going to go through PLTR, so Palantir. So this one, couple things. Recently, I think yesterday, the day before, Kathy Wood's ARK Investments announced that they increased their shares by, I believe, 5 million, a little over 5 million shares of PLTR. So it has a solid catalyst behind it. It did have a nice run today. You can see broke above its pre-market of $28 and ran all the way up to $30. Now this $30 is a solid level of resistance on PLTR. What I would like to see it do, it has been holding that $25 level here. So it dropped down, kind of held this support right here, and it's starting to bounce back up. What I would like to see on PLTR is it to break that $30. If it breaks $30, PLTR does have a nice clean shot up to $32 after that $30. So I want to see where it closes today. But this could be a potential good swing here on PLTR. Let's take a look at their options contracts. I always like to look at the open interest and like volume on certain options contracts here. So yeah, so you can see around March 19th at that $30 had a lot, the $30 strike has a lot of open interest on every single week expiration here, even on today's expiration. So the 19th here has a lot of open interest, a huge amount of volume on it. So people were anticipating it hitting that $30, which it did, really close to $30, and then rejected because it is a solid level of resistance there. What we can see now is it continue on the upside if it's able to hold that $28 pre-market high, and then obviously if it's able to break past that $30 range, we can see some solid upside to PLTR. So we'll be watching this over the next several weeks. I do think that this is a good solid swing position to take 2 to 3 weeks out. Probably I would most likely take that March expiration, March 12th or March 19th expiration on PLTR for that move to the upside. Then we have Roku. So Roku announced earnings yesterday after close, and they did beat their earnings expectations, and Roku had multiple price target increases on it as well. So if we look at Roku on the day today, so let's go to a 5-minute chart here. It did have a little bit of a run here. So you can see that Roku has a solid level of resistance here at around 475. It did hit 472, but I would probably round this up to this level of 475 just because it's a psychological level here, that whole number level of resistance. So I would round this up to the 475 level. Has a solid level of I cannot talk today. Has a solid level of resistance at 475. What I would like to see on Roku is for it to break that 475 level on the day today. I know it's around 2 o'clock on a Friday, so I wouldn't really recommend trading unless you're buying next week's expiration. But on the day today, if Roku is able to break above 473, we can see the next level it hit is 475. And then if it's able to hold above that 475 level, Roku also has some room up to 485-ish, and then that high here. Let's look at Roku's all-time high. Yeah, so the all-time high is 46. So if it's able to hold 485 on the day, or even if it's able to close above 473, 475 and 473, we can see it move back up to those highs at 480 and 485. So Roku on watch too for the move back up to those all-time highs. Does look like it's slightly flagging right now and has been holding its EMA for the day, so we could see some more movement on the upside. Then we have NVIDIA. So NVIDIA announced that they came out with revealed a chip that is used exclusively for Ethereum mining. So Ethereum is a crypto, and it's utilized just for Ethereum mining. They just came out with it yesterday. So NVIDIA did move slightly. So I just want to say that over the month of February, the market has not really had a solid direction, and it's been very difficult to trade and kind of gauge direction. So I've mostly been focusing on scalping options, not really trying to day trade or swing trade too much, because the market has kind of been all over the place. You can even see on Nvidia right here, it's just been kind of in a choppy zone right now, not really a lot of action going on. What I would like to see on Nvidia, if I'm looking for a long-term play, I definitely want to see Nvidia hold that 610 level. 610 level is a strong level of resistance on Nvidia. It did break above that 604 level here, pre-market level on Nvidia, but it wasn't able to hold. So you can see kind of broke slightly around 605, created a level of resistance, and then dropped back down. So now on Nvidia, what I have here is a level of support at 595, can drop back down to 585. And then on the upside, I'm really honestly looking for Nvidia above 610. That's a safer play to take if you're looking for a long-term play. If you're looking for a play on the day, just to scalp it, if it does break above 605, we can see 610 for a potential scalp. Otherwise, I would wait for Nvidia to hold above 610, solid close above on the day at 610 for it to have a continued upside trend on Nvidia. But it does have the catalyst behind it. So again, these are plays that you could potentially take for a few weeks out on the upside. And then Disney. So I really like Disney as well. Disney announced that they came out with a new streaming service, a part of their Disney Plus called Star, that's specifically for adults. So what I was looking for Disney on the day is for it to break that 185 level for this wick fill. So it could still potentially break 185 towards the end of the day. We still have about 2 hours left. But above 185, we can see Disney fill all the way up to 186.50, this wick fill up. Otherwise, for a long-term play, I do like Disney for a long-term play. It has been holding this 184 level, but barely. So you can see here that it's kind of just been congested right around this 184 level. So I want to see Disney close fully above 184 and start to bounce back up for a long-term play. If we see Disney hold above this 184 close and open above it, we can see some more long-term upside. By long-term, I mean 2 to 3 months out on Disney. Disney is also a good potential if you want to add it to your portfolio, if you want to buy Disney shares. But for options contracts, I would buy at least one to 2 months out on Disney. We can definitely see if it's able to hold this 184 level. If it's not able to hold 184, we can see Disney dropping down to around 170, 180, and 180. So if it drops below 184, we can see it drop to 180 on Disney, and then there's some congestion down to like 175 and then 170. All right, guys. So those are the ones that I'm kind of watching over the next several weeks and days into next week as well. So potential plays that you guys can take. Now we're going to move on to some options learning. All right, guys. So as you guys know, with options contracts, there's a couple different ways you can play them. You can day trade them, you can swing trade them, and you can scalp them. So mostly how I play options contracts is I usually scalp them. Sometimes I'll swing and day trade. It really just depends on the market. So I'm going to go through how I look to scalp an options contract and exactly the things that I look for before I want to get into a position for a scalp. So when you're looking at options contracts and you want to scalp it, what you want to look to get is you want to get the at the money strikes. So remember we said the at the money strikes are the strikes that are within $1 range of where the stock is. So if the stock is currently at, let's say 195, your 195, 196 strikes are going to be at the money, depending on what strikes are available. Those are going to be at the money. So within $1, 50 cents to $1 range of the underlying stock is going to be your at the money strikes. You want to select at the money because out of the money strikes are going to have lower deltas. So if we take a look, I'm just going to show you really quick the options chain so you guys can just see a clear visual of it. So if you look at the options chain, and we're just on PLTR right now, and I'm going to open here. So you can see the out of the money strikes have a significantly lower delta than the at the money strikes. So your at the money strikes are going to be 28.50 and 29. And then you can see as you move further away, especially when it gets towards the end of the week, it is 0 DTE right now. So this is why, especially on Fridays, if you're looking to scalp, it's really not safe to buy an out of the money contract, because if the stock does pull back or ends up moving against you, could take a hefty loss. On top of that, because the delta is a lot lower than your at the money strikes, the stock's going to have to make a more significant move on the upside for you to make up that loss. So that's why you always want to select your at the money strikes when you're scalping. When you're day trading, you can buy a little bit out of the money, but we're strictly talking about scalping. So your at the money strikes here, at the money strikes, you can see they have higher deltas and slightly out of the money, but especially towards end of the week, you want to select the at the money strikes. Then you want to pay attention to volume and open interest. So I've gone through volume and open interest a lot because I really implement it into my trading a lot. So like I said, when you see significant levels of volume and open interest on specific strike prices, usually you'll see this on your whole number strikes, and the stock has a catalyst behind it or has momentum behind it, usually that stock tends to run to those levels. For example, PLTR is a perfect example today. I wanted PLTR above 28. That was my target for an entry. Above 28 was a pre-market high. My target was $30. My target on PLTR was 30 because it was the level of resistance on top of that. It had the highest open interest, had a huge amount of volume on it, highest open interest on it on this week's strike. So for scalping, I wanted to see it hit that $30 strike. Or if you want to day trade it, if you're going to day trade it, you would buy next week's expiration. You don't want to day trade a 0 DTE contract. But specifically for scalping, you want to pay attention to the volume and open interest on those strikes. And then you want to look at IV. So remember we talked about IV is too high and the premium is going to fluctuate too much. If stock pulls back, you're going to end up taking an even heftier loss. You want to look for a moderate IV. Usually IV, depending on the stock, if it's a volatile stock or not, you'll see IV anywhere from around 40, 45 to about 100. Anything over 100, I do think that that's a higher IV, and you should be careful when you're scalping those types of contracts. But again, it depends on the stock. It depends on the volume. When there's a lot of trading going on that stock, or there's a lot of news anticipation, you're going to see that IV spike. It's not a bad thing. Your premiums are going to fluctuate more, but when you're scalping, you want to make sure that it's not too high where the volatility in that IV is going to crush your premium. So pay attention to the IV, moderate IV, and then the spread. So the spread is the difference between your ask and your bid price. So if the spread on the strike that you're selecting is too wide, so say for example, right now, the spread on the $29 strike is 3 cents. So the bid price is what buyers are willing to buy the contract for. And then the ask price is what sellers are willing to sell the contract for. So if the bid and ask the spread is too wide, the stock is going to have to make a more significant move to the upside or downside for you to make a profit. And because we're scalping, we're only looking for very quick, sharp price fluctuations in the underlying asset. If the bid and ask price is too wide, the stock's gonna, like I said, have to make a more significant move to the upside or downside for you to make a profit, which is why the tighter the spread, the better. That means that there's more trading going on in that stock. There's more liquidity going on that specific strike prices. And you'll notice that the strikes that have the higher volume and open interest are going to have the tighter spreads because there's a lot of liquidity, because there's a lot of trading going on those strikes. So this is why kind of how everything ties in together and why we pay attention to certain things. So make sure that the bid and the ask spread is tighter. And I know I'm going to get a lot of questions on how wide of a spread or what's a good spread. So again, this depends on the stock that you're watching. Sometimes with stocks that have, higher IV, some stocks that move in bigger increments, for example, Shopify, even Tesla, sometimes you'll see bigger spreads on the bid and the ask, which you kind of have to be careful. Usually with those stocks, I do look for a higher risk to reward ratio and a higher move on either side. Otherwise, you'll see a spread within 10 cents. So I usually look at a spread. Anything less than 10 cents is a good spread to me. Anything more than that, I do kind of pay attention to why it may have that spread before I take my trade. And then volume on the underlying asset, so on the actual stock. So you want to pay attention to volume on the stock when you're trading it. So obviously in the morning, you're going to have the highest volume. So I have this indicator. It's the volume average indicator. You can use the default volume bars as well. They work. Also, the only reason I use this is because it charts the moving average line. It'll give you the 50-day average volume. And it's kind of helpful for me to understand over the past 50 days, is the volume higher than the average line or lower? Usually when it's lower than the average line, it tends to be lower volume and you don't want to take that trade. You want to see higher volume as the stock starts to break out of specific levels that you're watching. Usually I look at my entries on the 1 minute and 5 minute time frame. So you can see here on Disney, kind of volume's been very low. Is today the 19th? Yeah, today's the 19th. So volume's kind of been kind of low. You'll see random spikes on Disney, but nothing significant, which is why the stock is kind of just consolidating here as well. No significant movement on Disney. Now, when you're scalping and you start to see the stock approaching a significant level of support or resistance, and you start to see a spike in volume, that should signify that the stock could potentially break that level because it's starting to build up that volume, more trading going on that stock. And then one thing that I haven't touched on recently, and because I think it's a little bit more complicated, I'll actually make a YouTube video on this, is your level 2 and your time in sales. So when you're watching, you want to pay attention to level 2 and time in sales. You want to pay attention on the upside on the bid. So your bid is obviously people that are buying, like I said before, and then your ask is your sellers. So your bid, your buyers, your ask is your sellers. You want to pay attention to on the upside. So say, for example, we're watching the 184 level on Disney, and we're looking for a break on the 184. If I'm looking for a break above 184, I want to see the bids start to hold 184. So I want to start to see 184s on the bid with bigger size, and I want to start to see the bid increasing as the ask is dropping. As the ask is increasing as well. So that's what you want to see on level 2. And then when you're in the trade, when you're in a scalp, and say, for example, the stock is at all-time highs or you don't have a solid level of resistance, on the upside, you want to pay attention to at what levels do you start to see a huge order of ask coming in. So huge ask sizes coming in. So say, for example, we get in at the 184 break, and I start to see 185, and I start to see 20, 30, 50, 100 ask size coming in at 185. That should signify to you that at 185, there's a wall of sellers sitting at 185 waiting to put their orders in. So 185 is going to be a potential resistance on the stock on the upside. And then vice versa on the downside, you want to see the bid start to drop, the ask start to drop, and then you want to see on the bid side. So if we're playing 184 to the downside and you start to see like 183, you start to see bigger sizes at the bid. So you start to see 50, 20, 10 at 183. That should signify that buyers are sitting at 183 waiting to buy up the stock. And then you should also see those orders going in through time and sales. So I know that was a little quick run through of level 2. Like I said, I'll make a YouTube video on it because it's way more complicated than that. But those are the basics and kind of what you should look for if you do use level 2, and what I look for when I'm scalping, when I'm utilizing level 2. So that's usually what I look for when I'm looking to scalp a stock. There's a lot of other things that a lot of other people use different technical indicators. This is exactly what I look for when I'm looking to scalp an options contract. It's helped me, and I hope that you guys can implement some of these things or things that you didn't notice before, and it'll help you kind of learn how to scalp better, or if you're missing something in your strategy, you can implement one of these things as well. So I'll give you guys some time to ask questions. I know I went through a lot in that kind of learning part, so let's go ahead and go into questions. Any tickers you want me to go through over the weekend, we can do that as well.
All right, I'll help you here with the questions here, Masi. So it looks like we got a good question here by Robin. She was actually giving you some really good feedback there. I'll scroll back and I'll give you that a little bit later. But definitely a good question here. How long are your scalps? Usually we're talking less than 15 minutes. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, so my scalps are anywhere from a couple of seconds to maximum, I would say 10 to 15 minutes. Usually past 10 minutes, I would consider it a day trade. But anything between that, it could be literally a 30-second trade to a 10-minute trade is what I consider a scalp. Anything more than that, you need to watch it on your higher time frames because it's most likely a day trade.
All right, so we've got a question on a stock that some people want to take a look at. I see multiple people mention this one. So let's go to Airbnb. That's ABNB there. And I mean, at the end of the day, the environment has been great for it, and it did IPO at a premium. So let's go ahead and take a look how the chart looks. Let us know, Masi. What do you think?
All right, let's look at Airbnb. Let me get rid of this. Just want to see its all-time highs. Okay, so 219.94. Okay, so right now, Airbnb, you can see clearly it's on a solid uptrend here. So if we have kind of a trend line from the low here up to where it's at currently, it has been holding that slight trend line here. It does look like it's slightly tried to break around this area, but it's solid uptrend right now, and it bounced off this trend line here. So we can see a nice bounce here at that 192 level. What we can see now on Airbnb, let me just make sure what the levels here are. Yeah, so I would say 205. So if Airbnb is able to break above 205, we can see some more upside to 210 and potentially 210, 212, and then 215. It looks like it has some resistance, but we would need to see Airbnb be able to hold above 205 for a long-term play. On today, same thing. So you can see this is even more clear on the 205 level. Solid resistance 1, 2, 3, 4 times. It's a solid intraday level as well too. So you could potentially scalp Airbnb if it pushes past 205. You can scalp potentially Airbnb to about 209 to 209, I would say, is probably the best level because it looks like it's a pre-market level on 209. So 205 for a swing trade. If it holds and closes above 205 today, for a scalp, again, 205 to 209 would be a nice scalp as well.
All right, let's go ahead and try to get another question here. Looks like we got Square being mentioned, and then we'll get to another question, at least on options also.
All right, so Square, with, for example, PayPal, Square have been moving with the Bitcoin hype as well, with them accepting Bitcoin, I think it was. I forget exactly what the news was, but just looking at Square right now, it looks like it had a nice pullback on the daily chart, which is really, really healthy. Pulled back here to its EMA. This is the 9-day EMA, so I wouldn't pay attention too much to it on a higher time frame. But it did pull back here, pulled back nicely to about 260 support level here on Square. It's been holding that level, and now it's starting to push back up. So what we want to see, we could potentially see Square break back up those. I'm touching my screen, pretending like you guys can see it. I don't know why I'm doing that, but if we see Square back up to those all-time highs. So today it looks like Square created a high. So it looks like Square does have a solid level of resistance at 281, and then it has kind of a wick fill to 283. If it's able to hold above that 280, 281 range here, we can see Square go back up to all-time highs, but definitely want to see it above this 280 range. It did have a nice little run today, early in the day, and is now just in a consolidation, has been kind of holding this VWAP. So it could bounce back up to 280, 281. But again, I would want to see it safer plays above 281 on the upside. And then if it's able to close above that today, could be a nice potential swing.
All right, seeing a good question here now. Let's get into a little bit more of questioning here. So it looks like we got a question on volume, but this one's a nice interesting one. If you don't plan to exercise an option, and you're probably planning to sell it, how many days before the expiration would you kind of look for that, I guess, the decay to really kind of kick in there and kind of affect you there? But what would you look for that kind of, if you were looking, let's say, to sell an option and the expiration's coming up, are you looking strictly at your kind of percentage, or are you also looking at some other kind of factors from the Greeks to affect your thinking there?
So if I'm not planning to exercise the option, I just want to close the position, there's a couple of things that you want to pay attention to. First, you should always know when you're going to exit your position, regardless of expiration, regardless of anything like that. You should have a target entry point for a scalp, or even a swing, whatever you're doing, and a target exit point. So what I usually look for if I'm trading a stock is I'll look for the stock to hit my target. So say for today, I had a profit target, of $30 on PLTR. So I was looking for PLTR to hit at 30 or get as close as possible to that $30 mark for me to close my position or take my profits. So that's the one way to do it. The other way to do it is depending on, how long if you're anticipating news, you could wait until the news comes out or hold the contract up until when the news comes out. Usually, like I said, I would pay attention to your support and resistance levels and make sure that if you are down on the specific play or the specific contract, I wouldn't hold until the expiration date. I wouldn't even hold the same week. I would most likely, especially if, say, for example, it's a Monday and your expiration is that week, you should probably close that position if you're in a loss Monday or Tuesday, because by Wednesday, theta starts to kick in, and Thursday and Friday theta is the highest, and you most likely 90% chance, even if the stock makes significant move on the upside and you're in calls, that theta is not going to let your premium, you're not going to be able to get that premium gain back on, because of the theta is so heavy on it, and you've already taken most of the loss on the stock on a 0 DTE. So don't hold it towards the end of the week, especially if you're in a loss. If you're in a profit, depends on your profit target. And then usually I aim for scalps 10 to 20%. Anything more than 20% is a great scalp. And then for swings, usually 40 to 100%. Anything over 40% on a swing is also very good for me.
Yeah, definitely. The reason I mentioned it is I've been on that other side.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
we all
we,
have.
yeah, exactly. If you trade options, sometimes it's going to happen. So you got to understand that side, of course. All
Yeah.
right. So one more question we got here. So this is an interesting question here. How does the overall market, or in this case, they're stating the QQQ and the SPY, affect your scalps? Do you watch the overall market when you're doing your scalps? And do you decide, I guess, on your direction based off of the overall market also?
Yes, so the overall market's very important to your scalps. I actually ended up taking a loss today on Baidu because I didn't pay attention to the NASDAQ. So if you don't pay attention to SPY, or you can use SPY or QQQ. I usually watch SPY and the NASDAQ. So NASDAQ is /NQ. This is a NASDAQ future, so it tracks you all the stocks in the NASDAQ, the 100 stocks in the NASDAQ. So you'll notice that all your tech stocks tend to follow the NASDAQ very closely. And if you don't pay attention to what SPY, and if, I can even pull up SPY here next to it, and you'll see that they tend to follow each other, usually pretty nicely. You'll see that both of them tend to move in the same direction on the day, depending on what the market's doing. But you can see here both drop today. If you're not paying attention and you end up buying calls and the overall market is dropping, even if everything you did in that trade is right, the stock breaks your level, it has good volume. If the market pulls back, it will, especially if the stock follows the market, it will pull that stock back as well. And if it doesn't have a solid catalyst behind it. So you always want to pay attention to what SPY, NQ, ES, QQQ, whatever you decide to watch, you want to pay attention to those when you're scalping, because they do have a significant impact on how your stock moves, even if it has a solid catalyst behind it, even if it's breaking. For example, for me, Baidu ended up breaking in the morning, but because NQ dropped in the morning, I ended up pulling the stock back and I ended up taking a loss because I wasn't paying attention to my futures.
Great question there from the chat. That's thinking. That's really
Mm-hmm.
starting to listen in what we're doing here. So definitely. Last one we'll mention is, we won't get into it, but if you didn't see it, she kind of already explained this, and why does the value of an option go down as time goes and approaches the expiration date. So check out her other videos also. You guys can check her out on Masi Trades at youtube.com. I'm sure she probably already even has a video on this. Do you got one, Masi?
Yeah, so I talk about the Greeks in a couple of my videos you guys can check out. And then also on the Benzinga page, if you guys just want to check out the options Greek theta, that will give you a lot of explanation on why the option starts to lose value closer to the expiration date. So it's based on the theta. So you guys can check both of those videos out.
All right, guys, like always, definitely smash that like button and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to check out Masi on Monday, guys. She'll be back, guys. So go ahead and let us go.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. I hope you guys all have a good weekend, and I'll catch you guys back on Monday. Bye.